You walk out of the elevator and you're already moving. Coat adjusted, hair checked, phone back in your pocket. You're halfway down the hall before you even register that the doors closed behind you. Something happened in there, and you barely noticed. The lobby felt close. The ride felt short. You arrive feeling, for no reason you can name, slightly more composed than when you stepped in. But the building is 30 floors tall. You came from the 22nd. Do the math, that ride was not short. It looks like a coincidence, but it isn't. Today, we're uncovering the hidden psychology of elevator mirrors, how a sheet of glass quietly rewires the way your brain measures time, and why the real reason this trick exists has less to do with vanity, and far more to do with a problem that engineers refuse to solve, and the almost accidental discovery that made solving it unnecessary. To understand elevator mirrors, we first have to look at what happened before them. When elevators started, filling American skyscrapers in the early 20th century, they created a problem nobody had anticipated. The buildings worked, the elevators worked, but the people inside them were furious. Not because the lifts were dangerous, but by then they were reasonably safe. Not because they broke down constantly, but waiting for an elevator and riding one felt like an eternity. Complaints piled up in building management offices. Tenants grumbled. Some swore they'd take the stairs. A few buildings in major cities reportedly lost tenants over it. Engineers were brought in and gave the honest answer. Faster motors, better cable systems, smarter dispatch logic. All of it was possible. None of it was cheap, and retrofitting an entirely new mechanical system in buildings already constructed and occupied was close to impossible. The honest answer was also, essentially, a dead end. Something else had to give. The surface-level explanation most people carry around goes like this. People complained that elevators were slow, so someone came up with a distraction. Put up a mirror, give people something to look at, and they stop noticing the clock. Simple problem, simple fix. And that framing isn't wrong, exactly, but it's incomplete in a way that matters. Because it implies the mirror is just misdirection, a kind of parlor trick to fool impatient people into accepting a bad situation. If that's all it was, you'd expect modern elevators, which are dramatically faster than anything built in the 1920s, to have quietly dropped the mirror. They haven't. If anything, mirrors have become more standard, not less. So if the wait isn't really that long anymore, why don't we just skip the mirror entirely? Here's what's actually going on inside your head. There's a principle in psychology called the difference between occupied time and unoccupied time. When you have nothing to do, your brain defaults to monitoring the passage of time itself, which it turns out it does very badly. Research on wait perception consistently shows that unoccupied waiting feels roughly twice as long as the same duration spent doing something. Anything. The clock in your head doesn't run at a fixed speed. It speeds up when you're bored and idle, and it slows almost to a stop the moment your attention locks onto something else. Think about what happens when a bartender at a crowded bar makes eye contact with you and holds up one finger, be right with you. The wait that follows might be identical to the wait before that moment. But it doesn't feel identical. Your brain has switched modes. You're no longer waiting in the dark. You're part of an acknowledged exchange. The unoccupied time collapsed into occupied time, and you barely felt it pass. A mirror does the exact same thing, but more completely and without requiring a bartender. The second your reflection appears in front of you, your brain pivots from, I am standing here waiting, to something more like a passive self-audit. You check your hair, you register your expression, you notice how your jacket is sitting. These are deeply automatic behaviors. Humans are wired to attend to their own faces at almost any opportunity, and they hijack your attention so smoothly that you never consciously choose to give it. The elevator ride ends before the audit does. You walk out feeling like it was fast. But here's the weirdest part. This wasn't invented by a psychologist. No researcher ran a controlled trial and published a paper that building managers then acted on. The insight arrived almost by accident, and the story of how it happened is more interesting than the trick itself. The version most often told goes like this. Sometime in the mid-20th century, accounts vary on the exact building and city, but Manhattan is the most common setting. A large office building was hemorrhaging tenant complaints about slow elevators. A consultant was brought in. He watched people wait, he timed the rides, and he concluded, after some observation, that the problem wasn't mechanical at all. The elevators were moving at a perfectly reasonable speed. The problem was that the people waiting had nothing to do, so every second felt like 3. His proposed solution wasn't a new motor, it was a mirror. The complaint stopped almost immediately. No one asked too hard why. The mirror went up, the problem went away. The lesson was filed under "It Works" and spread through the building management industry without anyone fully understanding the mechanism behind it. Working discovery, in other words, that predated the science that would eventually explain it. So, why did this solution stick so completely? And why does it persist in brand new buildings where the elevator reaches your floor in under 20 seconds anyway? The answer is mostly economic, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. A mirror costs almost nothing. Installation takes an afternoon. Maintenance is essentially zero. You clean it when you clean the rest of the lobby. Compare that to a full elevator modernization in an existing building, which, depending on the system, can run into hundreds of thousands of dollars per shaft. When the mirror demonstrably eliminated complaints at near zero cost, the financial incentive to pursue the engineering solution didn't just decrease, it effectively vanished. Why spend $250,000 fixing something that a piece of glass already fixed for free? There's also a liability angle that nobody talks about. Elevator speed in commercial buildings is governed by safety codes, and pushing an aging mechanical system faster to reduce wait times creates real risk. If a cable wears out prematurely because someone cranked the motor speed to appease tenants, and something goes wrong, that's a lawsuit. The mirror has no moving parts. It cannot malfunction in a way that harms anyone. From a risk management standpoint, it is the single safest intervention ever proposed to an engineering problem, and this is where it gets interesting, because the mirror didn't just solve the complaint, it permanently closed the conversation about the underlying cause. And here's the money angle that really locks it in. Elevator manufacturers don't profit from mirrors. Mirror installation doesn't require a service contract. There's no recurring revenue, no proprietary component, no reason for any commercial interest to oppose it, and therefore, no commercial interest ever did. Compare this to something like a computerized dispatch system, which a manufacturer can sell, upgrade, maintain, and license. The mirror had no corporate champion, which in most industries means an idea dies. In this case, the idea was so cheap and so effective that it spread anyway, through word of mouth between building managers without marketing or lobbying or a single trade show booth. That rarely happens. The fact that it did tells you something about just how well the thing works. But here's where it gets complicated. Not every mirror in a modern elevator is there to manage your perception of time. Starting in the latter half of the 20th century, accessibility regulations in the United States and many other countries began requiring mirrors in elevators, specifically rear wall mirrors, so that wheelchair users could see behind themselves and exit without needing to turn around. The Americans with Disabilities Act and equivalent laws elsewhere have since codified mirror placement as a physical accessibility requirement in many elevator configurations. In a significant number of buildings, the mirror is no longer optional, and the reason it's there has nothing to do with psychology at all, which means the same object is doing two completely different jobs simultaneously. In one reading, it's a behavioral design tool that quietly manipulates your sense of elapsed time. In another, it's an accessibility feature, ensuring that a space designed for standing bodies works equally well for everyone. Most riders don't know either thing. They just see themselves, fix their collar, and walk out. And then consider what happened about 50 years after that Manhattan building put up its first mirror. Software engineers at technology companies, people who almost certainly had never thought about elevator mirrors, independently discovered the exact same principle. A progress bar on your screen doesn't always reflect real computational work. Sometimes it moves at a fixed rate regardless of what's actually happening underneath. Sometimes a download is technically complete, but the bar continues filling, because testing showed that users who see a bar complete too fast feel cheated. Like the software didn't work hard enough. The bar is not information. It is occupied time, manufactured. Your brain does the same thing it does in the elevator. It finds something to watch, and it stops counting. The bartender holds up one finger. The progress bar creeps forward. The mirror shows you your own face. The mechanism is identical in every case. We discovered it in a building lobby, then forgot why it worked, then reinvented it in software, then forgot again. The human need to feel like something is happening while we wait is so fundamental that we keep stumbling into solutions for it independently, across centuries and industries, without always connecting the dots. Next time you step into an elevator, don't just see a mirror. See the point where a real engineering problem met the limits of a budget and lost. and where the solution that won turned out to reveal something more interesting than any faster motor ever could. What it revealed is that the problem of waiting isn't really an engineering problem. It's a perception problem. And once you see that, you start noticing the same principle everywhere, in theme park queues, in loading screens, in the way a good restaurant brings you bread while you wait for your table. Disney's Imagineers spent decades perfecting this exact idea inside their parks. Winding queue paths, entertainment at intervals, strategic signage, all of it designed to convert unoccupied time into occupied time and make a 90-minute wait feel like 45. They didn't invent the principle, they just industrialized it. The mirror got there first, and nobody even noticed. If you like understanding how the world really works, the economic pressures, the psychological shortcuts, the accidental genius hiding inside ordinary objects, hit like and subscribe for more. The elevator knew something about you before behavioral science had a name for it. Now so do you.